as in other parts of the world, the concept of manned flights fascinated the people of the varied and cosmopolitan Ottoman Empire. Science and arts played a significant role in the empire, and it was primarily the scholars of these interests who also looked upon the flight of man. The first projects and attempts were approached in two ways, by rocket power or winged flight. Now I mention some of the important Ottoman aviators and general knowledge about aviation of Ottoman Empire. Ismail bin Hamid Sevari is the great lexicographer, philosopher and theologian. He is trying to fly with the help of two wooden wings, throwing himself into the air from the roof of the Nisabur Mosque, but unfortunately he didn't make a successfully fly, falls to the ground and die. Hazarfen Ahmed Silabi was a legendary Ottoman aviator, reported in the writings of traveler Evliya Silabi to have achieved sustained unpowered flight. First, he practiced by flying over the pulpit of Achaemenid 8 or 9 times with eagle wings, using the force of the wind. Then, as Sultan Murad Khan was watching from the Sinan Pasha mansion at Serbernio, he flew from the very top of the Galata Tower, which in contemporary Karakoy, landed in the Dogaklar Square in Uskadar, with the help of the southwest wind. Then Murad Khan granted him a sack of golden coins, and said, "This is a scary man. He is capable of doing anything he wishes. It is not right to keep such people," and thus sent him to Algerian exile. He died there. Hazarfen's flight measurements height and distance are: the Galata Tower sits 35 meter above sea level, the peak of its conical dome 62.59 meter above ground level and 97.59 meter above sea level. Dogaklar Square is about 12 meters above sea level. The elevation change between the tower and the square is 85.59 meter. The distance between the tower and the town square is approximately 3.358 km. Lagari Hassan Silabi was an Ottoman aviator who, according to a sole account written by traveler Evliya Silabi, made a successful manned rocket flight. Evliya Silabi reported that in 1633, Lagari Hassan Silabi launched in a 7-winged rocket using 63.5029 kg of gunpowder from Serbernio, the point below Topkapı Palace in Istanbul. The flight was said to be undertaken at the time of the birth of Sultan Murad IV's daughter. As Evliya Silabi wrote, Lagari proclaimed before launch, "O my Sultan, be blessed, I am going to talk to Jesus." After ascending in the rocket, he landed in the sea, swimming ashore and joking, "O my Sultan, Jesus sends his regards to you." He was rewarded by the Sultan with silver and the rank of Sipai in the Ottoman army. Hassan Silabi blasted off in a 2-stage, gunpowder-powered rocket that flew 1,5 miles off the coast of Turkey before crashing into the sea. Silabi sat in a center section of the 90-foot rocket as it blasted off, said Moritz Rafavik, director of the Norway Aircraft Museum and owner of firm that plans to raise the rocket and exhibit it in a museum. 6 small engines circled a larger central motor. The 6 smaller rockets comprised the first stage that lifted the rocket into the air. When these rockets had exhausted their fuel, the larger central rocket, or the second stage, ignited and pushed the rocket further into the air, said Rafavik. Once the rocket reached its highest point, 900 feet, Silabi jumped off and floated toward the sea on a primitive form of hang gliding equipment. Ahmet Ali Seliktan, also known as Arap Ahmet Ali or Izmirli Ahmet Ali, was an Ottoman-born Turkish aviator of African origin, who was one of the first black pilots in aviation history. He was one of the few black pilots in World War I, like African-American Eugene Jacques Ballard, William Robinson Clark from Jamaica, Pierre Regin from Martinique and Domenico Mondelli from Eritrea. His grandmother was enslaved in Bornu and brought to the Ottoman Empire. Ahmet was born in 1883 in Izmir, in the Aden Vilayet of the Ottoman Empire, to his mother Zensiye Ermine Hanım of Nigerian descent and father Ali Bey, of African-Turkish descent. He aimed to become a sailor and entered the Naval Technical School named Hadihain Mekbi in 1904. In 1908, he graduated from this school as a first lieutenant. and then he went to aviation courses in the Naval Flight School that was formed on June 25, 1914 at Yaslkoy. He was then a member of the Ottoman Air Force. During World War I, he married Hadis Han, who was an immigrant from Prussia. He became one of the first black military pilots in aviation history when he started serving in November 1916. On December 18, 1917, Captain Ahmed Ali was sent to Berlin to complete aviation courses. He died in 1969. To quote David Nicholl's book, The Ottoman Army 1914 to 1918, most Ottoman aircrew were recruited from the Turkish heartland, others came from the Arab provinces of the Ottoman Empire as far south as Yemen, or even from neutral Iran. Captain Ahmet was a mix of Arab, African and Turkish origin and may have been the first black Air Force pilot in aviation history, having received his wings in 1914-15. The book features a photo of Ahmet in front of a Blériot 11-2 trainer at the Yaslkoy Flying School. The same photo is featured in Over the Front, Volume 9, Number 3, Fall 1994. Ahmet's wings would seem to have been earned prior to Ballard's earning his brevet number 6259 on July 20, 1917, though Ballard is often cited as history's first black military aviator. Vesihi Hurkis was a Turkish aviation engineer and aviation pioneer, who fought during World War I and the Turkish War of Independence. He designed and manufactured the first airplane in Turkey. He also founded the first airline company in Turkey. Born in Istanbul, he fought during World War I. When he returned to Yaslkoy, he was injured. Subsequently, he joined Tayyir-Mekbi, the Ottoman Aviation School. Soon after receiving his pilot's certificate, he commenced bombing and reconnaissance missions against the Russians. In one of these sorties, he shot down a Russian airplane, becoming the first Turkish pilot to bring down an enemy aircraft. He was subsequently taken prisoner by the Russians but managed to escape from Narjan Island to Iran by swimming. Following his escape, he returned to Istanbul and joined the 9th Combat Aircraft Squadron in 1918. He designed a fighter airplane but could not finish the project due to the terms contained within the Montreux ceasefire agreement. During the Turkish War of Independence, he shot down a Greek airplane, and made the first and last flights of the war. After the war and despite many obstacles, he designed and built his first airplane and a few other aircraft inside a converted sawmill which he had rented for that purpose. He used aircraft engines he had acquired during World War I to power the planes he manufactured. He adopted the surname Hurkis after the surname Law of 1934, and founded Hurkis Havayolari in 1954. Ottoman Aviation Squadrons. The aviation squadrons of the Ottoman Empire were military aviation units of the Ottoman Army and Navy. The history of Ottoman military aviation dates back to June 1909 or July 1911. The organization is sometimes referred to as the Ottoman Air Force. The fleet size reached its apex in December 1916, when the Ottoman aviation squadrons had 90 airplanes. The aviation squadrons were reorganized as the General Inspectorate of Air Forces on July 29, 1918. With the signing of the Armistice of Mudros on October 30, 1918, the Ottoman military aviation effectively came to an end. At the time of the armistice, the Ottoman military aviation had around 100 pilots, 17 land-based airplane companies, and 3 seaplane companies, totaling 80 aircraft. Establishment of the flying school and war units. On December 2, 1909, Louis Blériot and the Belgian pilot Baron Pierre de Caters performed the first flight demonstration in the Ottoman Empire. After witnessing the growing importance of an air combat support branch, the Ottoman government decided to organize its own military aviation program. For this purpose, officers were sent to Europe by the end of 1910 for pilot training. However, due to financial difficulties, the student program was aborted and the trainees returned to the Ottoman Empire in the spring of 1911. Although left without any governmental guidelines for establishing an air force, The Ottoman Minister of War of the time, Mahmud Şevket Pasha, continued to encourage the idea of a military aviation program. On June 28, 1911, a written examination was held, and on 4th of July, Cavalry Captain Mehmet Feysa and Engineer Lieutenant Yusuf Kenan were selected. Mehmet Feysa was sent to France and Yusuf Kenan was sent to Germany. But because the German school wanted an excessively high fee, both of them were enrolled in the Blériot School at Étampes near Paris in July 1911. In late 1911, Staff Lieutenant Colonel Shoria was entrusted with founding the Aircraft Committee with members from the Inspectorate of Technical and Fortified Formations. 2 tent hangars for the aircraft school were erected in January 1912 at San Stefano, west of Constantinople. On February 21, 1912, Mehmet Feysa and Yusuf Kenan completed their flight training at the Blériot School and returned home with the 780th and 797th French Aero Club certificates. In the same year, 8 more Ottoman officers were sent to France for flight training. Feysa Bey and Yusuf Kenan Bey flew over Constantinople on April 27, 1912. The Ottoman Empire started preparing its first pilots and aircraft, and with the founding of the aircraft school in San Stefano on July 3, 1912, the empire began to train its own flight officers. The founding of the aircraft school quickened advancement in the military aviation program, increased the number of enlisted persons within it, and gave the new pilots an active role in the Ottoman forces. The same year, a single seat and a 2-seater per dozen were purchased from France and brought to Constantinople in March 1912. 2 of the 2-seater version of Blériot 11B were also acquired, the first of which was presented by Supreme Commander Mirza Pasha. 3 of a different 2-seat model named 11-2 and 3 of the single-seat ground trainer Penguin were also used by the Ottoman army. The Rep was also one of the first planes to be deployed by the Ottoman Empire. This aircraft was designed by Robert Isnold Peltry and its first flight took place in 1912. They entered service during the same year in France. In accordance with an agreement reached between the producer and the Ottoman Ministry of War, 7 Rep planes were purchased and the first one was planned to join the Ottoman army on March 15, 1912. In late April 1912, the military aircraft was shown to the public for the first time when a large military parade was held for the honor of Sultan Mehmed Reis. 5 of the 7 purchased were single-seaters and the remaining 2 were 2-seaters. One of the single-seaters were planned only for ground practicing. The last plane was confiscated by the Serbians while being brought to Istanbul by train. These aircraft were already out of service by 1914. By the end of 1912, the Ottoman army had a total of 15 airplanes, acquired mostly through private donations.